As my heir, William now assumes the Scottish titles which have meant so much to me. He succeeds me as Duke of Cornwall and takes on the responsibilities for the Duchy of Cornwall, which I have undertaken for more than 5 decades.
Tears inside the palace walls. But why? What could push a king at 76 to break down in silence while his own family demands the unthinkable? This isn't just another royal headline, it's a storm that touches the very core of loyalty, trust, and betrayal. For years, Camilla's presence has been one of the most controversial chapters in the monarchy's story. But now, it's not whispers from the outside world threatening her standing, it's a clash from within. William, the heir to the throne, and Princess Anne, the king's most steadfast sister, have drawn a line. Their demand? To cut all ties with Camilla's family once and for all. But why now? What hidden tensions pushed them to such a drastic step? Behind the glittering crowns and formal appearances lies a fracture that could redefine the monarchy's future. A father torn between his role as king and his duty as a husband. A family battling over loyalty versus legacy. And at the heart of it all, tears shed by a monarch who never imagined facing this choice. Stay with us, because what we're about to uncover may change how you see the royal family forever. The weight of Diana's shadow. The story cannot be told without stepping back into history. Princess Diana was not just William's mother, she was the people's princess, a symbol of grace and tragedy.
It's what Princess Diana would have done. The people's princess, a royal with a common touch.
Whose memory never faded. Her charm, her compassion, and her ability to connect with ordinary people made her unforgettable. Even decades after her passing, Diana's image is carried like a torch by millions around the world. For William, that torch burns brightest. Every choice he makes is measured against the memory of the woman who gave him both love and sorrow. This is why every public appearance with Camilla carries a weight that outsiders may never fully understand. Behind the smiles and formal handshakes, William feels the silent comparison of his mother's dignity versus the betrayal she endured. The echoes of that pain never leave him. It is as though Diana's presence lingers in the room whenever Camilla steps forward, reminding him of wounds that were never completely healed. So when William sees Camilla's family being drawn into royal affairs, he doesn't just see distant relatives enjoying privilege. He sees a risk to the crown, and worse, a threat to his mother's legacy. Faces the public neither knows nor loves suddenly appear linked to the monarchy, and for William, it feels like an insult carried into the very future crown he will one day wear. To him, it is not just uncomfortable, it is unacceptable. Anne's perspective, though shaped differently, is just as firm. Known for her steel and blunt honesty, the king's sister has long guarded the monarchy's dignity. She has no patience for appearances that weaken the crown's authority. To Anne, Camilla's relatives carry too much baggage, lavish lifestyles, money scandals, and constant whispers of opportunism in the press. In her eyes, their presence erodes the credibility of the monarchy, making it harder for the public to trust the institution that depends so heavily on image and respect. And so, William and Anne, two voices often seen as opposites, found themselves united. Their demand was not heated or emotional. It was delivered in clarity and cold resolve. If the monarchy is to survive in modern times, it cannot afford loose ends. Yet for Charles, the demand cut deeper than they imagined. To sever Camilla's family from royal life would be more than a political choice. It would be an admission that the woman he fought to legitimize, the woman who has stood by his side for decades, remains, even now, an outsider in the eyes of those closest to him. A sister's unshakable voice. Anne has always stood apart from the rest of her siblings. Unlike her brothers, she never chased the glitter of cameras or the applause of public events. She was not fascinated by glamour, fashion, or celebrity-like attention. Instead, she carried herself with quiet determination and an unshakable sense of duty. For Anne, the crown has never been about sparkle. It has always been about survival, respect, and responsibility. Throughout her life, she has seen the monarchy bend under storms that could have destroyed it. Diana's heartbreak was one such storm, shaking public trust in the family to its core. Later came the explosive chapter of Harry and Meghan's departure, a moment that again tested the institution's strength. Each time, Anne did not waver. She reminded those around her that the monarchy is not built on individuals, it is built on an image that must be protected at all costs. So, when whispers about Camilla's family began entering palace conversations, Anne's patience reached its limit. To her, it was not a small issue. It was not rivalry, and it was not driven by jealousy. It was a genuine fear that the dignity of the monarchy was being sold for personal comfort. She saw Charles attempting to balance two worlds, his love for Camilla and his role as king. But to Anne, there was no balancing act. In her eyes, the equation was crystal clear. The monarchy comes first, always. Her words carried weight not because she shouted, but because she spoke with certainty. Behind closed doors, she is believed to have declared firmly, "The crown cannot carry the baggage of Camilla's family." Harsh? Yes. But her bluntness was a reflection of her loyalty to the institution. For Charles, it felt less like a political warning and more like a personal wound. His sister, someone who had always stood beside him in difficult times, was now questioning the very foundation of the life he had built with Camilla. And when Anne's voice was joined by William's resolve, the matter transformed. It was no longer a private concern whispered over family dinners. It became a united demand, a front that even the king, with all his authority, struggled to silence. William's silent fury. For William, this was never just about headlines or fleeting gossip. It was about something far more sacred, his mother's legacy. Diana's memory isn't just a chapter in his life story. It is the entire book that shaped him. The way she lived, the pain she endured, and the tragic way she left this world left an imprint on William that no amount of royal duty could erase.
We have reports from Paris that Diana, Princess of Wales, has been killed in a car accident and that her partner, Dodi, has also been killed.
Every decision he makes, every stance he takes, carries the shadow of Diana in the background. So when Camilla's family began slipping into royal circles with the quiet approval of Charles, William felt a sting that went beyond politics. It was personal. To him, this was not about inclusion or modernity. These individuals were not royals by blood. They were not part of a centuries-old institution chosen by destiny. They were tied to the crown only by marriage, and marriage to a woman whose very presence remains a reminder of his mother's deepest heartbreak. Diana never lived to see this chapter, and William has never truly made peace with it. The idea that Camilla's relatives could enjoy proximity to the crown felt like rewriting history in a way that dishonored her memory. In public, William's silence has always been mistaken for composure. Cameras catch his calm expression, his measured words, his practiced restraint. But behind the palace walls, that silence hardens into something far sharper. He doesn't raise his voice often, but when he does speak, his words carry a weight that cannot be ignored. They slice through the room with the precision of someone who knows exactly what is at stake. For William, this isn't about pettiness. It is about the survival of the monarchy itself. The crown's strength lies in its purity, its direct line, its unquestionable authority. Allowing Camilla's family to inch closer, even in the background, feels to him like blurring that sacred line. It risks not only his inheritance, but also the institution he has sworn to protect for his children. And so, with quiet resolve, William aligned himself with his Aunt Anne. It wasn't a decision made lightly. It was a stand born out of loyalty to his mother, to the monarchy, and to the future. His message was clear, even if delivered in the firmest whisper. Camilla's family has no place in the heart of the crown. The tears of a king. Charles never imagined his reign would begin this way, with wounds instead of triumph, with division instead of harmony. After waiting longer than any heir in history, he had finally stepped into the role that had defined his entire existence. The coronation crown was heavy on his head, but the burden on his heart was heavier still. Instead of enjoying the long-awaited dignity of kingship, he found himself in the middle of a storm that pitted his own blood against the woman he had loved for most of his life. The tears, of course, never came in public. The king could not afford such displays. But in the quiet hours of night, behind the closed doors of his private chambers, when the laughter of the court had faded and the palace halls lay still, Charles let the weight of it all crush him. It was then, in silence, that the tears fell. Few would ever see it, but those moments revealed a man torn in two. To choose between his wife's happiness and his family's unity was not a decision fit for any human heart, let alone a king's. Charles has always been a man of sensitivity, a trait often misread by the public as weakness. They saw the suits, the formalities, the clipped tone, but behind it all was a man who felt everything too deeply. His friends, those who truly knew him, would often say that Charles's greatest flaw was also his greatest gift, his heart. He loved with a loyalty that could not be broken, even when it put him at odds with duty. Camilla had been his anchor in the loneliest chapters of his life, the steady presence who had walked beside him through scandal, humiliation, and rejection. To sever her family from his life now, after all those years, was like asking him to carve away a piece of himself. Yet kingship, as Charles knew all too well, is not about personal love stories. It is about survival of the crown, of the institution, of the very idea of monarchy itself. In that cruel reality lay the tragedy of his tears. They were not shed only for himself, but for the monarchy that risked cracking under the weight of old wounds and new battles. His reign, so long awaited, now seemed less like a triumph and more like a test one that demanded a price his heart could barely endure. The future at stake. What does this moment truly mean for the monarchy's future? That is the question lingering in every whispered conversation, in every cautious glance exchanged along the grand corridors of Buckingham Palace. It is not just about Charles, Camilla, William, or Anne. It is about the survival of an institution that has weathered centuries of storms, scandals, and reinventions. And yet, somehow, this storm feels more personal, more intimate, and perhaps more dangerous. For William, the demand is not merely about Camilla's relatives. It is about drawing a line in the sand for the future he will one day inherit. He knows the weight of public opinion, how quickly loyalty can dissolve when the crown seems careless or indulgent. To him, allowing questionable figures into the royal fold is like leaving cracks in the foundation of a house already trembling. He has seen his mother's suffering, lived through the monarchy's darkest days, and promised himself that when his time comes, there will be no room for shadows. His vision is sharper, stricter, less forgiving. In his heart, the monarchy must be lean, focused, and free of distractions if it is to survive in the 21st century. For Anne, the issue cuts along different but equally firm lines. She has never cared for glamour or public approval. Her loyalty has always been to service, to the grind of duty, to the sacrifices made quietly and without applause. To her, the monarchy is not about who the people like or dislike, but about the dignity of the crown itself. Whispers of opportunism, scandal, or indulgence attached to Camilla's relatives are not just minor embarrassments. They are threats to the credibility of an institution that must appear unshakable. Anne believes there can be no shortcuts, no exceptions. The monarchy survives only when it demands more from its members than ordinary life ever could. But for Charles, the moment is far more agonizing. This is not only about politics or strategy, it is about love, loyalty, and the fragile ties of family. He spent decades fighting for Camilla's acceptance, weathering public scorn and private rejection. To now face demands that her family be cut off feels like an undoing of everything he sacrificed. And yet, he knows the crown cannot bend indefinitely. Each choice he makes will echo into the future, shaping not only his reign, but the reign of his son. That is the tragedy Charles faces. Will history remember him as the king who placed love above duty, clinging to Camilla even at the cost of division? Or will he be remembered as the king who sacrificed his own heart for the survival of the monarchy? His reign, though new, is already overshadowed by this dilemma. And with William preparing to inherit the crown one day, Charles's decisions now may either mend the family that carries the monarchy forward or break it beyond repair. Behind the palace walls, the public will never truly see all of it. They will scroll past the headlines, glance at carefully chosen photographs, and watch short video clips where smiles seem effortless and laughter looks genuine. But what they will never witness is the silence that follows those staged moments. They won't hear the way conversations trail off at the dinner table, leaving an emptiness no golden plate, no crystal glass, and no centuries-old tradition can cover. The world outside sees a fairy tale. The people inside live with the fractures no camera dares to capture. Camilla, perhaps more than anyone else, feels the sharpness of this divide. Outwardly, she wears calm like a cloak, as if nothing can pierce her composure. Yet behind closed doors, she knows the truth. Every time William looks at her with cold distance, every time Anne's words carry that sting of disapproval, she feels the weight pressing down harder. And then there are Charles's tears, private, unseen, yet impossible to ignore. Each one of those moments circles back to her family, to the question of whether her presence brought strength to the crown or planted the seeds of its undoing. Her family's involvement was never meant to grow so heavy. At first, it was small gestures, an invitation here, a name added there. But as time passed, their presence began to stretch further, slipping into spaces that had always been reserved for those born into the royal circle. What might have seemed harmless to Charles, acts of kindness, attempts to weave together love and duty, began to look to others like a slow unraveling. To William, it was unacceptable. To Anne, it was dangerous. And to Camilla, it became a thorn she could not pull out without tearing the fabric of everything she had worked so hard to build. Because this is not just a family, no matter how much they might wish it to be. It is a battlefield disguised as a household, where emotions, history, and duty collide daily. Every glance, every word, every decision carries weight far beyond the walls of Buckingham Palace. The monarch's image, the crown's stability, the people's loyalty, all of it trembles under the strain of what happens when private choices bleed into public consequences. And at the very center of it all stands a king. Charles, fragile yet determined, is caught in a storm he cannot escape. He is torn between the love of his life and the legacy of the institution he swore to uphold. He wonders in his quietest moments if the crown he fought so long to inherit is already slipping from his grasp. Is he still the sovereign in control, or is he a man cornered by the very family who should stand beside him? These are the questions the public will never read in the tabloids. They will never see the hidden fractures that stretch across the most powerful family in Britain. But behind the palace walls, where history and humanity clash, the truth is far more raw and far more dangerous than anyone outside can ever imagine. So, where does this leave the monarchy? At a crossroads more fragile than anyone imagined. A son determined to honor his mother's memory. A sister unwilling to compromise the dignity of the crown. a king caught between love and duty, and a queen whose family, whether she likes it or not, has become the dividing line of it all. This is not just a story of tears, it is a story of legacy. What happens now will shape the monarchy for decades to come. Will Charles find a way to bridge the gap? Or will William and Anne's demand become the turning point that forces the king to choose once and for all? The palace may look unshaken from the outside, but inside, it trembles with choices that could alter history itself. And that's why this story matters. Because it's not just about a king in tears, it's about the future of the crown, the memory of Diana, and the survival of a monarchy standing on the edge of change. If you found this story as gripping as we did, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think King Charles will side with William and Anne, or will love for Camilla's family win? We want to hear your voice in this unfolding royal drama. Stay tuned, because the truth behind the palace doors is only beginning to reveal itself.